hello everyone. I want to welcome you to Church Online. Thank you for joining us this week. Today we are launching a new message series called Worship on the Way. And I'm at a location right now in northern Idaho that meant a lot to my dad growing up. He used to love to come here to hunt and to come here to hike. And now I'm here with one of my brothers and with two of our sons to share a place that has meant a lot to our family. We're going to learn as Pastor Steve lays the context and leads us into this series that 2,000, 3,000 years ago, people from all over the region of Palestine used to converge on the city of Jerusalem to celebrate God and to worship God together. And on the way, they would prepare their hearts through these psalms of ascent. Hey, the good news is that after 15 weeks of being scattered and watching online, next Sunday, here's the exciting announcement, we are reopening for in-person services. So this Monday, you will receive an email from us giving you an opportunity to register for either the 9 a.m. service or the 10:45 a.m. service. And that will help us as our capacity is a little bit different than normal to honor physical distancing. So check that email and sign up for the service that you feel most comfortable to attend, or you can go to our website at suncrestworship.com and click on the reopening tab. If you're not at a place where you are physically ready to be with us in those in-person gatherings, I want you to know that we will continue. In fact, we're launching live streaming services at both our 9 and 10:45 a.m. services beginning next Sunday on June 21st. So we are so excited to get together for those of you that feel comfortable to get together. So enjoy, for some of you at least, one final online message, and we look forward to seeing some of you in person next week. So be blessed as we begin this new series, Worship on the Way.
Your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path. Psalms 119, 105.
Well, hi, my name is Steve. I'm one of the pastors here at Suncrest Family Worship Center, and it's a pleasure to bring you God's Word today. Well, I don't know about you, but the last couple months for me have been very difficult to plan anything. As soon as you plan one thing, things change and you have to pivot. Surprise, you got to make a change. So case in point, back in March, we had been planning to take a family trip to Walt Disney World for the first time ever. And then, surprise, in mid-March, Walt Disney World is closed. Then by the same token, just last month, we had been eating at home for 10 or 12 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden overnight it was, surprise, you can eat inside restaurants again. So it's been a hard season to plan, because once you plan, you've got to pivot. Well, it's been the same thing with this series that we're starting today called Worship on the Way. We'd had some really cool ideas that we were going to go outside and film on trails and on mountain peaks as we kind of work in this hiking motif. We thought that would be just so cool and so interesting to try during the month of June. So those are some really fun things that we had in store. Then all of a sudden, surprise, now we're in a place where we can have church in the building again. So this video that you're watching right now, we think will be the last one that is video only, and we're planning for next Sunday to be the first time we're in the building together again. And that is so exciting that we thought we're going to scrap those ideas. We had to go outside, and we're going to get ready and plan to be in the building again. So this series that we're on, the Worshiping on the Way, is going to be focusing on what are called the Psalms of Ascent. Now this is a group of Psalms numbered 120 through 134 in the book of Psalms that were sung by pilgrims on their way to worship at the temple. So they would sing these songs as they hiked and as they made their way as families to temple worship, to feasts, and to sacrifices together. And they're also songs that our souls can sing and our souls can hold on to as we are on the path now to worshiping together here in this room. But even besides that, they are songs that help lift our spirits and lift our eyes to the Lord as we sing them and as we rehearse them. So the reason we chose this hiking motif was that as these pilgrims would make their way to Jerusalem, they all had to climb at some point. Jerusalem itself sits at about 2,500 feet in elevation above sea level. And so wherever you were coming from, as you made your way to Jerusalem, the last part of your hike was uphill to get to the city itself. And so Jews would do this 3 times a year. The Feast of Passover, the Feast of Pentecost, and the Feast of Tabernacles. At those 3 times of year, people would make their way from all over the country to the city of Jerusalem. And as they made this trek, they would sing these particular songs, these 15 Psalms of Ascent, as they would make their way and climb. So this was something that Jesus himself would have done. Jesus and his family would have traveled to Jerusalem for some of these feasts. You remember the story when Jesus was a kid and his parents left him at the temple? Well, that was one of these feasts. And on the way to that feast, they probably sang some of these songs. And as Mary and Joseph left with their family, not knowing Jesus was still back at the temple, they were probably singing some of these same songs. So Jesus sang them, people throughout time sang them. As they would do it, they would be ascending physically to Jerusalem, but also ascending spiritually in their heart as they set their eyes on the Lord in preparation for worship. And so you and I can do the same thing when we repeat them. It's kind of like our hearts are taking an escalator, raising us up to the level where God is. So, as we're riding that escalator, as we're taking that hiking trail, we hope it leads to something, don't we? We hope that there's a place that we're getting to. Well, what is that place? We could call that place today the good life, that we're looking for the good life. We're looking for the blessed life in the Lord. We all want it. We all want to know that life can be better ahead. We all want better life for ourselves and for our kids. But how do we get it? How do we get the good life? Whatever it is, however we describe it, what does it take to get the good life? Are we doing it right? Are we doing this thing called life correctly, especially if there's places in our heart that don't feel so good? Is this as good as it gets? Is this all that it's ever going to be? Is there something more? Those might be questions that you've asked yourself in your pursuit of the good life. Well, the good news today is that one of these Psalms of Ascent, Psalm chapter 128, lays out what it means for us to live the good life. So that's our answer for us today, to the good life. So we're going to read Psalm chapter 128, beginning at verse 1. The psalmist writes, "Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him." Verse 2, "You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Yes, this will be the blessing for the man who fears the Lord. May the Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. May you live to see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel." So, we all want to live the good life. But we might have different ideas on what that really looks like and what that really is. And this psalm right here lays out for us what the good life is all about, how you get it, and why you should want it. So in this psalm, you'll see repeated a couple of times, depending on the version you're reading, the word blessed. So in my version here, in the New International Version, blessed appears 3 different times. Now it's interesting that that Hebrew word that we translate as blessed could also be translated as happy, as double happy. Happiness on the inside, happiness on the outside. And if you're a fan of Duck Dynasty, you can take it one more. You can be happy. But that's what the Hebrew word is telling us when God says that we are blessed. It means that we are both happy on the inside, truly happy, and happy on the outside, happy all around, double happy. So how do we get there? How do we get to this double happy blessedness? Well, the answer starts in verse 1 when the psalmist says that we are happy when we walk in obedience to him. Other translations would say this way: we are happy, we are blessed when we walk in his ways. It's as if God is saying to us, follow me to the good life. Walk in the steps that I've set before you, the steps I've already walked, and you will find the good life. So we're going to say today that the good life is found in taking God's trails. That's how we find the good life, the life that we're after. It's found in taking God's trails after him. So what does that mean, to take God's trail? What can that mean for us? Well, there's a couple of things. It means that we think the way that God thinks. That's what reading Scripture is so valuable to a Christian's life and to any person that wants to know more about how God thinks. He's written it down for us in His Word. So part of living the blessed life is thinking the same way God does about things and issues in our world. Secondly, it's also about looking at life the way that God looks at life, viewing the wins and losses in the same way that He does, looking at our life the same way God looks at our life is taking God's trail. But also making decisions the same way that God does, through the same grid that He makes His decisions. When we start doing that, we start finding that double blessed, that happy, happy life that God has intended for us. In all of this, God sent His Son Jesus to show us how the blessed life really looks, to live day in and day out. That life He lived is the life of blessing. And so what Jesus shows us more than anything, that love is the way. That love is the operating system to live that happy and blessed life. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 22 that we should love God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, with all of our strength. That loving is at the very center of it all. And He told some of His disciples that we need to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so love, that system of self-sacrificing, of caring for others, is central to the idea of taking God's path and to walking in God's ways and to finding the blessed, good life that we're all after. So let's ask another question this morning. What are some of the benefits of taking God's trail? What benefits are there for us in walking in God's ways? What benefit is there for us in pursuing life the way God sets out for us, especially here in this psalm? What's going to happen to us if we live this way, right? Every one of us should be thinking those thoughts about how we live our life. What's going to be the eventual outcome of my decisions and my actions today? Am I going to be happy with the outcome later on in life? Well, here's a couple of things that come to us as a benefit, as a result of taking God's trail. Number one, we see God's blessing on our feelings. We feel God's blessing on our own feelings, the way we look at and interpret and respond to the events in our world. You see that in verse 2. The psalmist says that you will have blessings and prosperity. Those things will be yours. You can have those things. A lot of us would remember the song and repeat that it is well with my soul. When we take God's trail, we can truly say that it is well with my soul. And this idea of wellness is woven into all of these psalms and all of God's instructions for our life, that it would be well with us. That well, it's a good picture for us, like a water well, a deep reservoir of refreshing that we can draw from and take from and be refilled again. That's the wellness in our feelings that the Lord desires for us. So we may have negative responses to things that happen in our world, but when we run them through the filter of Scripture, we start to feel about things the same way that God does, and He starts to interact with our feelings and transform even our feelings. That's not the only benefit. A second benefit to taking God's trail is God's blessing on our finances. And this is the money question, that our finances. It says in verse 2 that you will enjoy the fruit of your labor. Now, when you walk in God's ways, it's not a one-for-one scenario where all of a sudden He starts depositing paychecks in your bank account, but you start to see the outcome of living honorably, of living honestly, of living a hard-working life. It starts to pay off, the fruit and the labor of your hands. See, when you start to walk in God's ways, when you're following the instructions laid out in this psalm, you become better at work. You become a better coworker. You become a better employee. You become a better boss. When you live the way Jesus sets out for us, you become more caring. That's a benefit to every single relationship you have, to be more caring. If you really follow and set your life according to Jesus' teachings, you'll become a harder worker. You realize that all the work that you do is ultimately unto the Lord, and so you better do it well. So that makes you a better employee, a better coworker, a better boss. I think it also makes you more creative. When you're following in the footsteps of the great Creator, you can't help but be more creative in your thinking and in your acting. And when you have good relationships with the people you work with, you're more collaborative. You're more sharing, you're more giving, and you're more open to new ideas. And so in all these ways, when we walk in God's path, when we take God's trail, it's going to show up some way in our finances and in our blessings in that way. We'll be more wise in how we spend our money. We won't be wasteful. We won't be greedy with how we hold on to money. We will treat our finances appropriately. I think about Daniel. In the book with his name in the Bible, Daniel, he was a magistrate in the Babylonian kingdom. And it says in Daniel chapter 6, verse 3, that Daniel was distinguished, that he was excellent in spirit, and it gave him more influence. That serving God actually made him a better servant of the king. So God's blessings are on our feelings, on our finances. Number 3, God's blessings are on our families. In verse 3, it says that your wife, if you're a husband, your wife will be like a fruitful vine, and your children will be like olive plants. So that's God's blessing on the people in our household. I think that's interesting when it talks about our children as olive plants, realizing that an olive plant doesn't begin to produce fruit for 7 years. Planting an olive plant, you got to have a 7-year forecast. You got to be waiting and looking ahead 7 years to get the harvest from that olive plant. And parents, that's probably how you feel about your kids, that you're working hard now, you're tending the soil, you're watering. But boy, 7 years would be a pretty short time to see a harvest for kids. But that is what the psalmist is saying, that your kids will be like olive plants that are growing up. And even though it takes 7 years to reach fruition, once it does, olive oil was very valuable. Olive oil was hard to get, and so it cost a lot of money. And so our kids are that way. Husbands, it says that your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. That's the picture of a good relationship that's healthy and growing and producing fruit and is enjoyable. You know, not a lot of us have olive plants or grapevines in our house or in our backyard, but as we think about this whole mountain motif, I was thinking about a berry that a lot of us love to pick in the summertime in the mountains. It's called a huckleberry. Now, maybe you've done this. You've gone out to mountains around here and picked huckleberries. I remember last year, my family, we went on vacation to Glacier National Park. If you've ever been there, as you get into western Montana, you'll see signs everywhere for huckleberry everything. Huckleberry pie, and my favorite, huck shakes. Every day of our vacation, I had a huck shake, and I was so happy. I was happy to have a huck shake every day of that vacation to taste some of those huckleberries. And maybe you've been like my family. In years past, we've taken the drive or the hike up Mount Spokane, and there are little spots all around Mount Spokane where you can find, if you know what you're looking for, huckleberries to pick. And I know families in our church and in our area set this as a tradition. When the huckleberries are ripe, they head up there and they pick these things and they enjoy them at home. And it's a unique treasure for this part of the world because huckleberries are really hard to grow at home. They actually grow best in the mountains. They actually grow best at a couple thousand feet of elevation. They're one of the few plants that does well with that high altitude and the cold. They blossom there. And I think there's a lesson for us that some of the finest fruits actually grow in the fiercest conditions. If your home, if your life, if the world right now feels like a fierce condition, you can take a little bit of solace from the huckleberry, that the huckleberry makes it through the winter, and then at just the right time in the summer produces a flavor and a sweetness that is just hard to match anywhere else. And so that's a picture for us as Northwesterners about what it's like to live the good life, that even after the storms are over, there can be sweetness ahead. So, God's blessings on our feelings, God's blessings on our finances, God's blessings on our families. Fourthly, the benefits of walking God's trail is God's blessing on our future, on the days ahead. Verse 6 says this, that you may live to see your children's children. May you live to see your grandchildren blessed. One translation even says it this way, enjoy the good life every day of your life and enjoy your grandchildren. If you've got grandchildren, you know how special this is. I know from having grandparents and seeing my parents and my in-laws grandparent my kids that there's just a special sweetness to having grandchildren and enjoying them. That's part of the blessing that God intends for you. To have kids that you don't have to raise every day, but you get to spoil whenever you get them, that you get to pour special love into them. That's one of the blessings God intends for you. But what's the psalmist talk about? He's talking about leaving a legacy, something that outlives you, something that goes on even after you have passed on. I think about David in the Old Testament. David had a heart to build a temple for the Lord. The Lord told him, you're not the one to do that. You've been a warrior. That job of building the temple will go to your son Solomon. So what did David do? He started saving up money, collecting and saving money for a temple he would never see. And so when Solomon came on the scene in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, Solomon had the resources to build the temple that was in the heart of his father David, but he actually got to see it built because the funds had already been raised. That's legacy. That's living your life with an eye to the future. That's part of what the psalmist says leads to a blessed life. Principle there is that when we build God's house, God ends up building our house. When we invest into the kingdom of God, we end up getting returns into our own family. So the way that we spend and use our money is important, is critical, is central to how we live the best life, to how we get to the good life and live it for God. So we've talked about some of the benefits of taking God's trail. Let's move on to this question. If that's all true, if all this is true that we've talked about these benefits, why don't we take God's trail more often? Why don't we sign up to walk this way? What's up with us that we could see these benefits and know they're there and not take God's trail? Well, I think one of the truth is our way always seems pretty good to us. We've got a way figured out for life. God's way seems pretty different. And so when the push comes to shove, we go, well, I had this idea for my life. I think I'm going to walk that path. People like to call Christians narrow-minded, that there's only one way and only one path. But Jesus himself called his path narrow. He said, narrow is the way that leads to life, and only a few find it. Not because God's trying to make it hard for you, but because sometimes it's hard for us to walk that path that he has set for us. It's narrow, it's difficult, it's winding at times, and it's hard for us to follow when we have the easy route already mapped out in our minds. See, we look at the trail that Jesus blazed for us, and we see it as leading away from the good life. In fact, maybe we would say, look at the two diverging trails in the wood, and the trail that we would take would be the one by the water that seems smooth and level and peaceful, but that trail that Jesus is asking us to take looks all uphill and rocky. And we look at it and go, I don't think so, Jesus. This way sure seems a whole lot better for me and for the path that I want to walk. It looks more difficult, that it's leading away from the good life. Because, of course, if things were more difficult, that can't be the good life you'd be asking for, Jesus, right? But here's the truth, that some of the best blessings God has for your life are found on the other side of discomfort. Some of the biggest lessons God wants to teach you are on the other side of that hill. So even though it may look like Jesus is taking you uphill, walking a more difficult road, understand that if he loves you, there must be something good on the other side of that peak. There must be some blessing over there that you don't know about. That in fact, maybe in the rewind of your life, you'd say, oh, this blessing over that hill was so much better than the blessing that would have been down by the water, the way I would have walked on my own. See, the truth is, all of God's paths, they wind. I mean, it's straight. Jesus says it's straight and it's narrow, but to our eyes, they seem to wind. We can't see the end from the beginning. And in fact, God's path taking us toward good things and the good life is never direct. It often winds through difficulty, through sacrifice, through humiliation and humility, that God's paths take us in directions we wouldn't have gone on our own. Let's look at some of what Jesus said about being blessed and living the blessed life. In Matthew chapter 5, we have a list of what are called the Beatitudes, and they all say the description for somebody who is blessed. Let's look at just a couple of those right now. Matthew 5:3, Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Does that sound good to you, to be poor in spirit? Like, none of us want to pursue poverty in any sense, a spiritual sense, a physical sense. Poor is a word we want to move away from, but Jesus actually says, you're blessed when you're poor in spirit. The kingdom of heaven is yours. How about in verse 4? Jesus says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. We don't like mourning, do we? We don't like having anything to mourn for. We don't like loss. We don't like grief. We don't pursue mourning in any way, shape, or form. We try to avoid it. But Jesus says mourning is the way to be comforted by the Lord. That is actually his path for us, to walk through mourning. So if you're mourning right now, if you're grieving the loss of someone or something, know that Jesus is walking right beside you. That, in fact, it's part of God's path to lead you to comfort. If you skip ahead in chapter 5 of Matthew down to verse 10, he says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness." Persecution is another thing we don't want anything to do with. We don't want to be persecuted. We don't want anybody taking our religious or personal rights away from us. We don't want anybody coming after us simply because of what we believe. And so we push against that and we fight against that. And Jesus would tell us, you're actually blessed when that happens because the kingdom of heaven is yours. And he goes on to say that's how people throughout time have treated God's priests and prophets. They've gone after them. And so when it's happening to you, don't be surprised, but recognize you are on the path to God's blessing and God's good life. So God's paths, they wind, but we think we know better in life. We think that sure, that's the path mapped out for prophets, priests, and kings, but I have a better idea. We look at this roadmap that God shows us in the Bible. He's giving us all of the details to his trail right here. We look at the map, but we don't understand the map. We look at the map without being able to recognize the key points and elevations along the way. And so we go out and we try to cut the most direct way from A to B to get to what we want and where we want to be. Jesus would say, that's not how you get there. You can't get there that way. You got to get there on the path that I have blazed for you. We all see our setbacks as catastrophic, but in Jesus, we can actually see catastrophes as catalysts for change. Take the example of forests. And we would, of course, always fight forest fires. That I know people who work in forest service or as firefighters, they try to protect and stop forest fires. But there is a truth that some of the trees that we love and the plants that we love are designed to come back to life after a forest fire. That a forest fire, in fact, is the perfect environment for some plants to sprout back to life. So what we would see as a tragedy in a forest fire, and many times it is, especially with loss of homes and lives, that is tragic. In the natural sense, it is just one of the steps along the path that God has for nature. He's already built in systems to bring about regrowth. So the truth for us, or the lesson for us from the forest, is that even when fire sweeps through our lives and is destructive, God has already planted the seeds that will regrow and produce again. So, we've talked about why we don't like to take God's trail. Let's talk about now the secret for taking God's trail. Is there a secret to doing this? Is there a hidden idea? Is there something about this, the starting point, the key for us? I'd say yes. But it's right in the beginning. It's not really a secret. It's in the very first verse of the psalm when it says, fear the Lord. Fearing the Lord is the beginning, the key, and the secret to taking God's trail. Psalm chapter 25, verse 14 says this, the secret of the Lord is with those who fear him. The secret of the Lord is with those who fear him. What does that mean? Have you ever heard that phrase, fear the Lord, and wondered, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm supposed to be scared of God all the time? Well, here's what fearing the Lord means. It means to respect him. It means to stand in awe. It means to look at and have wonder for. That's what fear of the Lord really means. The Hebrew word translated, that we translate as fear, is also to hold as awesome. Say, God, you're awesome. God, this is awesome. If you've ever stood at the top of a peak after a hike and looked out at the landscape below and go, whoa, this is awesome. That is part of the idea behind this idea of fearing the Lord, to look at what he has done and go, wow, this is incredible. That's the secret. That's the key to walking in God's path. Now, there's a lot of things in our life that we start off fearing, being afraid of, and eventually we come to understand more and have a greater comfort with. So even just in our lives, in the last couple of months, you may have been afraid of the virus. You may have been afraid of infection for yourself, your loved ones, or the entire community. You may have felt like me in the first couple of weeks that, are we all going to get this? Is everybody going to die? And there's a certain level of anxiety and fear that may have come up in your heart in the early days of finding out about coronavirus. But maybe what's happened for you is as time has gone on, as you've learned more, as other people have learned more, that fear subsides to maybe a healthy level of acknowledgement, respect, caution, but maybe, and I pray, no more of the fear and the worry and the intense anxiety that can grip you as you come to engage more with the knowledge of it. Maybe for you, it was the economy, that as places were shut down, workplaces were shut down, people were laid off and furloughed, a real fear, an honest, gripping anxiety about the future of our economy and of your own business may have gripped you and paralyzed you. I know that that's happened for a lot of people. I know that was a concern of mine. What's happening with our economy? And as we move on, you see that, boy, things can happen, that jobs can go up in the month of May, that some businesses are coming back, and no doubt there has been places and people impacted very severely, but there is good news in all of this, that as we walk this thing out, we may have gone from fear to a place of understanding. And maybe you were like me, that as you watch protests turn to riots and looting in our country, that there's a moment where you at least thought, am I in danger? Is my family in danger? As I drove into Spokane a couple of weeks ago on the first day of protest there and saw signs saying, stay out of downtown, as I saw a helicopter circling downtown, I had real thoughts about my safety and my family's safety, what is going on. Be honest with you, a certain sense of fear. And now as time has gone on and more information or things have developed, there's less of a sense of fear, more of a sense of understanding what's all going on, viewpoints that people had that I didn't know about, and issues going on that maybe I wasn't aware of, that fear led to understanding. The same can be true of the Lord, that you may have feared him. You may have been afraid of coming into God's presence. As one person told me, I was afraid as soon as I walked in the doors that I would burst into flames, that the sin in my life would just explode, or that God would smite me for being so bold as to walk into his church. You may have started off with fear, but I hope that fear leads you to engage with the Lord and come to a place of understanding and respect, and maybe even now, love. See, there are some things that we can start off fearing and end up growing to love. When I was little, I would have been afraid of the ocean. Because growing up in Western Washington, the ocean was always cold. The ocean was always harsh. It was great to go to the beach, and I have fun memories being on the beach, but we didn't swim in the water. Then when I was in college, a couple buddies of mine, we went to the Florida coast, and we tried surfing for the first time. And I grew a little bit more afraid of the water, because when you go to a place with real waves, there's real danger. There's real power, even in a 3-foot wave. And as we started, these three inexperienced surfers, we got pounded over and over again by these waves, and it's amazing the power of a little wave to drive you into the sand. And so that fear led to a greater respect of the ocean and of those waves. And then eventually, as I studied how these waves were rolling in, I had to sit on the beach, take a break from surfing to look at these waves. I started to understand how they worked. Oh, if I dive underneath them, I can get under some of that power. And then the magic happened. I caught my first wave. And at that moment, I was in love. I was in love with surfing. I was in love with the ocean. I couldn't believe the feeling of a natural force pushing me back to the shore. It was amazing. I felt in harmony with it. So it started off as fear, turned to a healthy respect, and eventually has grown into a love. And I pray, oh Lord, let me get another chance to go surfing because it's so special. See, that's what I think a relationship with Jesus can and does do for people who follow him. You might start off being afraid of what he'll do to you, and you might grow to a place of just respecting his awesomeness and his power and his righteousness. And if you keep moving, if you keep walking his trail, you come to a place of love, admiration, wonder, inspector of his awesomeness and his love and his power. So when we think about God, it may start off as fear. But my hope for you that right now, if you're afraid of God, if you're afraid of what it means to engage a relationship with God, that you would take these examples and that you would see that there's actually wonder and love and awe on the other side of that fear if you'd be willing to walk his path. That fear that we have of God should give way to wonder as we think about what he did for us. As we think about what Jesus did on the cross, as we think about the horror that it is to be nailed to a piece of wood and left to die a gruesome, public, humiliating death, that can start off as fear for us. leading eventually to an awe and a wonder at how the God of heaven would humble himself and put his strength on hold to do that for us. And then if we keep walking that path, getting closer to him, following in his footsteps, we see that, there's a love and a grace that he would do that for us. So here's the truth. Jesus is the power to walk in God's ways. If you've been listening to this going, there's no way I can do all that. Steve, there's no way that I can follow these things in here, that I can walk in God's ways. You don't know my history. I would say that Jesus does know your history, and Jesus knows your future. Walking and following Jesus is the way to follow in God's ways. That strength that he set aside to be nailed to the cross for you, that strength now can live in you when you have a relationship with him. That's the point, that the good life is found in following in the steps of Jesus. But this good life, we find in the end, the good life is not an objective, that the good life is an outcome. It's the outcome of following in the steps that Jesus set for us. It's an outcome of taking God at his word and living that way even when it doesn't make sense and even when it's difficult. The good life is not an objective. It's really an outcome. You don't get it by chasing it. No. You get it by chasing Jesus. When you chase after Jesus, you get the good life as a part of it. So here's our last truth today. When you follow Jesus, he makes the good life follow you. By following after Jesus, he causes the good life to come after you. Like the psalmist wrote in Psalm 23, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. When you follow Jesus, the good life follows in after you. That's the point for us today. As we look at this passage, as we think about what it's like to worship on the way to where we're going. And now that can be, we worship as we're on our way to meeting physically in a building again. We can worship as we're on the way to whatever God has for us in our future. That we can worship on the way, in the process, whatever God is doing in our hearts and in our lives, even before it's fully done, fully fulfilled. We can worship him on the way. That's how he has set life for us. Would you pray with me as we close this morning? And I want to pray with you today, especially if you've been watching this and you've been thinking about a relationship with Jesus. If you've been in that place of fearing him, maybe even respecting him, but not yet ready to put your trust in him and to step in his ways. Can I tell you that all of this can be true for you, that all of this that we've talked about, the good life, can be true for you if you would take that step toward him. So I'm going to pray here in just a second. And if you want to begin taking those steps with Jesus, it's really simple. All you have to do is admit that you need help. Admit that you can't do it yourself. Believe that Jesus is the one who did it for you. And confess your sin and that you want to start walking in his ways. So if you want to pray that prayer, you can just pray right after me as we pray right now. Lord Jesus, I admit that I cannot do it myself. Jesus, I believe that you walked the way for me. And now, Lord, I confess that my sin has kept me from you. And I confess that I want to walk forward with you from this day forward in my life. Pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Friend, if you pray that prayer, I believe that Jesus comes and sets up camp in your heart. And we want to celebrate with you. We want to help you take next steps on this path of Jesus. So if you'll use our digital connection card or email the church, just let us know you made this decision. We've got stuff we'd like to put in your hands. We've got people we'd love to reach out to and help you take those next steps on the path. People who've walked this path, taken this trail with God for a lot of years, and they'd love to come alongside you and help take those steps. And for anybody else today, as you're watching this, as you're thinking about the good life that God would have for you, I want to pray a prayer of blessing on you as we close the message this morning. Let's pray now in closing. Jesus, we thank you that you have the good life prepared for us. We thank you, Lord, that when we take your trail that you have blazed for us, that we not only walk in blessing, but we walk in right relationship with you. And so, Jesus, I pray that you help each one of us today see where those steps are that we need to take in our family, in our finances, in our own feelings, or in our faith in the future, that, Lord, you would help us to take the steps that you walked out ahead of us and to take it seriously. Jesus, we pray all this in your name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Thank you for listening to the word today. We pray that it blesses you as you take God's trails in your life.
every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering. There's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. And every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. Give and take away. Give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name.
Peace, bring it all, the peace. The storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name still, call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Breathe, call these bones to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. Let's sing the name of Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be
Hey, thank you for joining us for Church Online this week. Again, next Sunday, we have a 9 and 10:45 in-person gathering. Check your email on Monday to register for a service, and we look forward to worshiping on the way together next week.